Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in the poetry discussion playlist here on the channel. This is a poem and a poet completely new to the channel. John Frederick Freeman, the poem known as The Call, and it reads as such. Is it the wind that stirs the trees? Is it the trees that scratch the wall? Is it the wall that shakes and mutters? Is it a dumb ghost's call? The wind steals in and twirls the candle. The branches heave and brush the wall, but more than tree or wild wind mutters, this night of all. Open, a cry sounds, and I gasp. Open, and hands beat the wall, beat door and wall. Open, and each dark echo mutters. I rise, a shape and shadow, tall. Open, across the room I falter, and near the door crouch by the wall. Thrice bolt the door as the voice mutters open, and frail strokes fall. Open, the lights out, and I shrink, quaking and blind against the wall. Open, no sound is, yet it mutters within me now, this night of all. Was it the wind that stirred the trees? Was it the trees that scratched the wall? Was it the wall that shook and muttered? Or love's last ghostly call? So, I think to talk about this poem, we have to come back to this. The call. That is what we're going with here. The call to open, the call to come, the call for love. Now, by today's sentiments, we might find this a bit hokey, and I say today's sentiments. John Frederick Freeman was born in the late 1800s, 1880, died 1929, was by trade in the insurance business before deciding to quit and go writing full time. Is that the call he speaks of here? The call to create, the call to follow one's dreams, the call for the love of what it is you love, maybe not who you love. Here's what I want to ask, though. I mean, that's all maybe here, maybe there, maybe neither here nor there. Here's what I want to ask. Does this poem have any power today? Now, I said he was born in 1880-ish, died in 1929. He saw the First World War. His first collection of poetry was released in 1911. Before the First World War. We know what World War I did to poetry. World War I scarred poetry's face, but added a whole lot of character. If you read the trench poets, and then you come back to something like The Call, I think you will have difficulty finding exactly what it is that John Freeman is hoping to accomplish with this piece. Is there irony in this poem? And I'm not meaning this poetry discussion to pick on John Freeman. Not at all. This poem is certainly of its time. This poem is certainly the type of poem that was in fact popular when it was written. In fact, I guess John Freeman was successful enough at writing that he was able to quit his job and do this full time, a job in insurance. Is this the type of poem that a man from insurance would write Is that what the call means? Leaving your otherwise unfulfilling job, but one that paid the bills, in order for that love of writing. Is that what we are to take from this poem? I think with the catastrophe that had undone the world between the First World War and the end of the Second World War, there was very little room left for romanticism. Is that where poetry is supposed to live? Is this the call where poetry is supposed to live? I think it's difficult. It's more difficult to write poetry with a sense of irony than a sense of urgency. I'm sure if you spent enough time here, you could find some irony. Maybe there's some stark irony that I have missed in my readings of the poem. I'm willing to grant that. I think that it is much more difficult to make that case than it is to make the case for irony in the glory of women. It's a poem, by the way. I'm not putting that out there, that into the ether. But this time period, late 1800s, early 1900s, is a very precarious time for poetry. You have someone even like Robert Frost, who really emerged after this, maybe concurrent with this, right? Robert Frost, who did write with some sense of irony some of the time. Robert Frost, who was not a poet who cheered things on, I guess I would say. Was not a poet who was a rah-rah kind of guy. Robert Frost, born in 1874, died in 1963. I would venture to wager Robert Frost was the last popular poet. I would venture to wager that Robert Frost was the latest living poet. That if you walk down the street today and you had 3 random names and one of them was Robert Frost, and you asked 10 people, pick out the poet, maybe 5 of them would get Robert Frost. Is irony one of the things which has, unfortunately, killed poetry? Killed poetry in the wider sense, killed poetry in the public eye. This poem, especially when you take the call, the title, into consideration, fairly on the nose. Maybe not exactly, but fairly on the nose. It is fairly easy to understand what this poem is about. The title unlocks what this poem probably is about. Is this one of the last vestigial sort of hurrahs for poetry? Poems like this? I don't know. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more poetry discussions, more literature in the future. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.